There But for the Grace of God is a prequel to the season-ending cliffhanger we've previously looked at within the Serpent's Grasp. It starts simply enough, with SG-1 arriving on an empty planet inside some kind of facility, and they seem to believe that it is alien rather than just one of the typical independent human cultures. But the Goa'uld were apparently still not good neighbors, because there's a totem or something there that Teal'c identifies as a warning. This planet has had the shit kicked out of it. Even dead, it's still likely to be radioactive. Except Daniel has found a collection of artifacts from numerous other worlds, so when O'Neill orders them to leave without giving Daniel even a moment to explain why he's so excited, Daniel decides to shove whatever he can into his backpack, and in the process, he activates what looks like a mirror, except it doesn't show his reflection, just everything else in the room. Being a scientist, Daniel decides to touch it, and gets zapped, and next thing he discovers, he's all alone. So he returns. They really take it seriously when you make off with their pens, Dr. Jackson. Daniel is treated like a hostile and is soon greeted by Colonel, not General, Hammond. We later find out that O'Neill is the general in charge. And Daniel is dragged away to be drugged. If only all the missions could end with that option. When Daniel comes to, he's been locked up, but soon he gets a visit from Catherine, the one who brought him into the Stargate program in the first place. She wants some answers, which I'm sure he'd kind of like to have too, although hers are how he got an SG-1 GDO, which allows him back because they opened the iris for him. Well, he says that he left from here just a few hours ago, and further says that he was recruited, solved the gate address problem, and was involved in the first mission to Abydos, which is why he's a member of SG-1. But she recalls reality being quite different.
I even went to meet you at one of your seminars to ask you to join us. But you said no.
I did.
You were quite rude, actually.
I was.
Well, that was James Spader. You can't hold that against Daniel here. He says that she is supposed to be retired, living happily ever after with Ernest, which prompts her to bring O'Neill down to talk with Daniel. Except Daniel is confused why O'Neill doesn't know him, and offends him by mentioning that Teal'c is their friend. But Daniel brings up things that he shouldn't be able to know, including how Jack's son shot himself with his gun, winning him some points. I mean, winning points for telling the truth. Obviously, bringing up the dead kid is not winning any friends around here. Carter arrives, but as a civilian advisor, not an Air Force officer, and reveals that the planet is under attack. That's why everybody is so jumpy. Entire cities are being wiped out by the Goa'uld, so everybody's a little worked up.
I feel like the victim of the biggest practical joke ever.
Why would you think that? The apocalypse is very serious. Daniel recounts the events that preceded his arrival here, finding this play school doohickey that activated the Alice protocols on that mirror, which caused it to light up. And after touching it in the name of science, Daniel found himself alone and so came back here, where he's received this warm welcome. But the good news keeps rolling in. Daniel has explained about Teal'c, where they had met Teal'c, and gave the gate address, not realizing what O'Neill had in mind. It's sending through a nuke. Not a nice way to say hello to anybody. Daniel tries to convince O'Neill not to do it, but with a death toll well past 1 billion already, kid gloves are off and the brass knuckles are on. All Daniel's pleas do is further annoy O'Neill that he's more concerned with the casualties on the other side than the ones that are on Earth. When you're losing a war of genocide, it's kind of hard to be idealistic. Nobody was running around during War of the Worlds dealing with litter, after all. Nobody on The Walking Dead obsesses over their carbon footprint. Daniel wonders if maybe the Stargate could have done this, because after all, as one of my many typos showed me, it is only one key away from being Star Fate. I mean, that can't be a coincidence, can it? Well, actually, yes it can, because that's what a coincidence is. So Carter explains, no, it doesn't work that way. It can allow you to travel to any other planet in the galaxy that has a Stargate, or even other galaxies if you had enough power to do so. It can allow you to move through time, accidentally introduce particles into a star, and create a supernova if you used it with a black hole. Well, moving between realities is just stupid. Carter explains the idea of parallel realities to get the point across to the audience, though. which Daniel figures must be what happened, and Catherine says the mirror is probably to blame, although that's easy to do when it's not here to defend itself. But there's no time to think about that. An off-world site is dialed into the gate to prevent it from dialing out. A problem because the current mission, besides lobbing nukes to unsuspecting planets, is to evacuate people to the beta site. So while they try to suss this out, because after all, this is Season 1, remember, we don't have a whole lot of experience dealing with these things, Daniel decides to then do something that anybody today would know is the stuff of madness. He runs his name through a search engine.
Have you ever Googled your own name? It's like opening a door to a room where everyone tells you how shit you are.
He finds out that, in fact, he is currently dead. Although this is Daniel, so being dead is all in a day's work for him. But there's worse things going on than Daniel being dead. Although I'm sure that one version of him has strong opinions on that statement. Air Force One is shot down on its approach to Cheyenne Mountain. And after that, the ship is then coming straight to the mountain to deal with those upstarts once and for all. But they're not going to just blow it up. They've decided to raid the place personally. Apparently they're that cheesed off that they'd rather fight their way down there than just nuke it and call it a day. But the problem is that the off-world activation of the gate keeps them from evacuating.
That's probably because you sent that bomb through to Teal'c.
Not a good time, Daniel. Yeah, I realize it's the end of the world and I just wanted to squeeze in before our final curtain. I told you so. So their best hope is to see how long the Goa'uld can keep the wormhole open, and hope that it's not much longer than what they can do. Then they immediately can try to dial out before the other side dials in. So the name of the game is Buy Time, and fortunately, we have a credit account with Mr. Boom Boom. So here's hoping that this works in bringing down the Jaffa. Meanwhile, they share a transmission with Daniel that came from the region of space where the planet is that has that mirror. Daniel's experience with the language on Abydos allows him to translate some of the message, saying where the destroyers come from.
It's just more sounds, pulses, or beats of some kind.
Yeah, we've analyzed them. They're divided into groups: 3, 32, 16, 8, 10, and 12.
Hud, hike! Daniel figures, hey, 6 numbers here, 6 numbers in a gate address, minus the point of origin, of course. This must be a substitute for the goofy symbols on the Stargate. After all, it's a bit difficult to communicate via words what they are. Alright, first one is that one that kind of looks like a wrench knocked up a soccer ball. They can use Daniel's recording of the alien Stargate to allow them to determine the point of origin symbol, and from that determine the likely gate coordinates for wherever the attack comes from. So that's something, but first the wormhole finally closes, so it's time to race to dial, but it's not going to be easy. The Goa'uld likely have a DHD, and we have the dialing computer. Essentially, it's a race between the touch-tone phone and the rotary phone. So yeah, we lose. But at least we know that the maximum amount of time that can be open is 38 minutes. It's useful, especially because with a window that long, you could easily deliver a lot of pizzas if you had to. As if all this isn't bad enough, repelling the Jaffa invasion is not going well, especially because Teal'c is the one who is leading the invasion. And he's kind of a badass. I mean, he's even wearing a serpent head helmet, just to make the point clear that this is serious business. Well, serious as far as they're concerned. I know it's hard to take those made-for-TV helmets seriously. Always makes them look like they're doing that Kilroy was here thing. But thanks to the tape, we have a cipher to determine what the coordinates are. O'Neill is ready to dial up and send another bomb through, but is told there are a lot of reasons why that is a terrible idea. The least terrible being that it would accomplish nothing, because accomplishing nothing is better than making the situation actually worse, like all the other options are. For example, wasting their one shot of dialing out of here just to launch a possibly ineffectual bomb as a final middle finger before the extinction or enslavement of the human race. So that's a bad thing. But before anything more can be said, the others note the alternate version of O'Neill and Carter in the videotape, and then are shocked at the sight of Teal'c. He is indeed a Jaffa. Explain that to your friends with the guy currently leading the death squad into the base. That's a bit more complicated than the situation allows for. Kind of requires flow charts, maybe a PowerPoint. Definitely snacks, though. Snacks are the grease of interdimensional diplomacy. Feel free to put that on a t-shirt. Daniel says, what if instead of the pointless bomb, how about you let me go to the planet where the magic mirror is so I can go home and warn my people about this problem? O'Neill is not a fan of that, probably because it doesn't involve a bomb in any way, shape, or form. But when Daniel suggests that it could work and save an entire world full of people, O'Neill is at least willing to hear the crazy plan. Maybe if Teal'c learns what they're trying to do, he explains, to liberate his people from Goa'uld tyranny in another reality, he might be willing to at least allow Daniel to go back home and prevent this from happening on his Earth. So O'Neill says he'll see what he can do.
I take it they're not engaged in your reality.
No, although you should read some of the fanfic. Oof. So O'Neill heads over, and his knowledge of Teal'c's name gets him at least enough of a chance to play the tape for him, and then to further bring up Teal'c's hatred of being a slave to the Goa'uld. Well, Teal'c denies this, of course, but what else would he do at this moment? Say, "You're right, person who is about to be wiped out. Let me confess in front of everyone that I think the undisputed winners in this barbaric war of genocide are all assholes in my eyes." But O'Neill points out that in the other reality, there is still hope for that Teal'c and for that Teal'c's family, including his son.
We received word from my home world. You sent a weapon of destruction there through your Stargate.
Oh, that look. That's the, oh yeah, I did that while I was drunk last night look. For doing that, Teal'c personally uses the Omega staff weapon to blast O'Neill at point-blank range. He'll be lucky if his boots are left after that. Meanwhile, they're getting ready to try to outrace the bad guys dialing out when the wormhole comes down. All personnel have been tapped for this, so it's just Catherine to run the program, who will then try to make it down there before the self-destruct takes out the place. Carter runs off to get that play school interface thing, but gets caught by the Jaffa. So she pretends that she's willing to sell us out, but instead uses this as cover to pull a grenade. Yep, we really maxed out on explosives around here. Believe me, in this particular reality, we have made bombs a lifestyle choice. So the gate goes down and Catherine manages to get the dialing program started, but the Jaffa are everywhere, and soon Teal'c himself arrives in the gate room, shooting Daniel in the shoulder just as he goes through the wormhole. But at least he makes it, and thankfully the mirror is still on, if you know what I mean, because Daniel uses it to get back to his reality. He's got that gate address still, and the warning that the Goa'uld are coming. And it's not one if by land, two if by sea, no, it's all from bloody space. This episode is a must-see because it establishes directly why the events of the finale are so vital. I give it a stamp of recommended. Alternate realities allow you to have your cake and eat it too. We get the apocalyptic invasion of Earth without having to deal with the ongoing consequences of that invasion. Everyone wisely plays themselves, just slightly tweaked versions of themselves thanks to their circumstances. Nobody is the opposite of their normal personality. It's just, in some cases, they went left instead of right, but nobody went left instead of going down a crazy straw, if you follow me. It was an inspired way of building towards the climax of the season, because it's frequently hard to take threats seriously because they're vanquished so often. I mean, they have to be in order to have some kind of regularity to the show. So, by showing the overwhelming victory on Earth here, the annihilation of the Stargate Project personnel completely, we are aware of just how serious the threat is. Nicely done.